ready?
Yes.
Um, this is the fourth time that I've seen the film, and I have to say that it's not unusual to shine a light on the creative, but I think that what really sets this documentary apart is that it also reveals the commitment and the collaboration and the occasional cost to the wives and husbands and children and partners who support that process. And I think that what you and Catherine and Dylan were willing to share was really a great gift, and I can't thank you enough for being so honest for all of us. So Dan, what really stands out to me, first of all, is life is once, forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yet my understanding of you from the film, from your books, from many things that you've said, is that you keep trying to relive your experiences. And I'm wondering if you want to talk about that a little.
Yeah, I mean, like all of us, we have trauma from our childhood, or most of us anyway, that are willing to admit it. And I kind of always envision sort of like a different childhood, and whether I was looking at other friends that I grew up with or this or that. And the truth of the matter is, if I'm really honest and I really look at my childhood, I had a pretty amazing childhood. I had two parents that fostered every interest I ever showed. They took me to the library constantly. Like, I was the kid that just wanted to be at the library all the time. And if I was interested in repairing engines or interested in art, which I was always very interested in art, always very, very supportive. But there's a notion to me that there's this utopic existence, which I know is a fallacy. I know it doesn't exist, and I know that no matter how good it looks on the outside, everybody struggles, and I think that's sort of the thread, the human condition, that we all struggle. But I kind of always felt a lot of solace in art, and I was always way more interested, like photographically, I wasn't super interested in telling stories. I was way more interested in aesthetics initially, and then I became a photojournalist, and then of course I had to tell stories, and I enjoy it. But I think more than a storyteller, I think I'm more of more focused on like aesthetics, which I really like aesthetics, I think. So the kind of photographers I admired were like Stieglitz early on, and Stieglitz and Alvin Langdon Coburn and Clarence H. Watkins, and kind of the early pictorialists, and then into the 20s and 30s and 40s, and kind of found my solace in Gene Smith, which I love that you brought up Gilles Perez and Gene Smith and these guys, because they're like, if you don't know this stuff, you're lost, as a photographer. If you don't know the history of the medium, what do you have to contribute to the medium, So anyway, I think I know I go off track like every time I'm asked a question. So just, kick me or something if you want.
Well, I'll throw another one out, and this is actually for both of you.
All right.
So Dan, you wrote that evidence of a life replete with love is, in my mind, the greatest gift a photographer can give to the world. Mm-hmm. Yet the evidence of your love for Dylan brought him pain. And can you and Catherine talk about that and how you three have worked through it?
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you start.
Yeah, I mean, that moment, so I've talked to Dylan about that moment in the film, and so I was working on that book. I had that stuff up on the wall for like a year, and I'd been moving it around and pulling stuff away, and I kind of finally came to like what I thought was a good final edit, about 60 images. And it was up, and the filmmaker said, "Oh, can Dylan come out and you guys can look at it together, right?" And so at first when he came out, it was totally fine. We were just looking at it, and he's like this, well, you saw it. And then there was a moment where it just like turned for him, and that was the pure sort of like emotional reaction to it, which was beautiful. And when I think about it now, like I go into the mode of shooting something. He was kind of a prop sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And and I know there were times where he resisted, and I would like insist that like we weren't done, and he started charging me $20 a roll to photograph him. And I think a lot of, in that scene in the film, I think a lot of that trauma like just really like came to the surface like really quickly. I think the thing that hurt Dylan more than me photographing him, because that was an activity we could do together, was me being gone all the time, you know, and having Kath, you know, left in charge of the business and of him and everything else, and I would just sort of off to the races kind of thing. I think that there was a period of his life where that was the case, but, you know, like I said in the film, I think, you know, I talk to him every day, and we have a really great relationship, and I'm grateful for that, you know. And I'm like the dad that he could accuse me of anything, and I would never get defensive. I would always just absorb it and apologize, because it all fits, and if he's voicing like his emotions to me, I'm more than happy to sort of like take it on, you know. Definitely I'm not the defensive, like, you had a great childhood, you know, at all, ever.
Catherine?
I back up everything he says, and I do think, you know, we were young, and Dan's career took every ounce of energy he had for many years, and there just really wasn't much left. And I think Dylan, there were times where he really felt like he needed a father, and Dan just couldn't. I mean, he just couldn't be in two places at one time, and it was difficult. He had a difficult childhood, but I think, you know, hindsight is 20/20. So as we got older and started to be able to self-reflect, you know, amends were made to Dylan, and a different level of effort to be connected to him. So I think, you know, do I wish we knew different when we were younger? Don't we all?
Yeah.
But I think that I think now they're in a different place. But Dan's right, that moment in the film, those things Dylan said out loud, he had never said to either one of us in that way. It was a very genuine moment. So I think it was a cathartic thing for him also, in a way, to be able to say it, you know.
Yeah.
So.
I know we have a lot to talk about, and maybe just one more question about the film. And it's so different from the others in the series. I mean, everyone's got a great backstory, but you shared yours. And I guess I wonder, what was the moment when, you know, Michael Cromit said to me, all of a sudden it became a little French film. And he felt that there was a trust that you put in them. And I guess I wonder, what was the motivation?
I'll answer the beginning of that. For me, it was like, the last thing I want to watch is another like Nat Geo like adventure documentary, where it's just, hey, look at this great adventure. I have this great life. Everything's great, you know. And I was just like, man, just ask me anything. I'll just tell you anything. I told them that. It's like, you can ask me anything. And so they started asking me things, and I would answer them honestly, and it kind of started to be their agenda. You know, they're like, what else can we ask him? Can we film him sleeping? I remember they asked Kath that. Can we film him sleeping? Kath's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can you leave your doors unlocked at night? Because we want to come in and film Dan asleep at 3 a.m. They did ask me that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, for me, I spoke to the producers for a year before this happened. They never once said anything about me being in the film. They never asked me, that we never discussed it. I thought they were going to go film photo shoots and interview people in the industry. Boy, was I wrong. But, you know, I don't even think they knew what this was going to be. They started filming, and of course, they didn't tell us anything, obviously. We couldn't see. I couldn't watch when they were interviewing Dan. He couldn't be around when they were with me. So we didn't know until we saw it, to be honest with you. I didn't know what he said in his interviews. He didn't know what I said. We were surprised ourselves. And I'm not sure they knew, but they come in, they spend 8 or 9 months with you. They literally became our friends. And they get you to be so comfortable. You just feel like they did a great job, I gotta say, the director and producer. Amazing, because that's how they got us to, didn't it just feel like we were hanging out with them?
Yeah, they did.
So, we were just being really
We were being
open.
really honest, but we were also very trusting in them.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I think we did feel a level of trust. And so, good on them that they developed that early on.
Yeah. Well, having spent a lifetime in the National Geographic ecosystem, I can say it's the most beautiful and intimate documentary I think they have ever produced.
Wow.
So, don't anybody send that back
thanks.
to DC, will you?
Yeah.
If we could have the lights up just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone has any questions yet. Anybody out there? Okay, we'll keep going. Dan, in The Road to Seeing, you wrote, "I have found that I am able to see much more clearly when I'm doing the least. Yet we've heard so much about Dan chaos. So how do you get to that place?"
Well, I think it's what I was talking about is just centering. Like if I'm in a situation and I just center myself, I'm not doing anything, it becomes clear to me. And I think I think if you keep the chaos going, it just gets wound up. You're not seeing what you're doing, You're not seeing, there's no awareness. And I think the idea of when I'm shooting a lot of things that are fleeting, like that train's going 70, and, it's one frame, right? So, you have to be present. But I think that place of presence comes through, a practice, which is the practice is to okay, we're going to shoot now, just kind of quietly, acknowledge what's going on. A lot of times with my crew, before we shoot something, kind of bring them together and say, okay, if I remember we had a huddle before we did the shoot with Obama. That was a 10-minute shoot, which is a very fast shoot for me. And had a little meeting, okay, here we are at this point in history. Let's all be aware of what's going on and be present so we have a memory rather than this feeling we're prepared, we've been lighting for 6 hours, we're ready. Okay, let's all just try to take it all in, And, my guys thank me for that stuff, just to try to bracket it so that you can have kind of an optimal sort of experience. And I think that's difficult to do, especially when there are frenzied things going on, But anyway.
Can we talk about the trains?
The trains that are on right now.
I'm loving the trains.
I love the trains. I'm just, ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with trains, and I had model trains. I still have my model trains that I got when I was 8 years old. I still have the same ones. And I have a big train set upstairs that I play with, and electric trains, and I just love trains. So I relax when I go photograph trains. I just do it for myself. I haven't never sold a train picture to anyone.
Not
I don't know if anybody wants one.
Well, I think when I saw the reel, I knew so much of the work, and I didn't know the train work. And I think what really struck me in looking at those images is that the ones that felt most about trains were the ones without the trains.
Without trains in them, yeah.
Yeah, there's something really beautiful and haunting, like you're waiting for it to come around the bend.
Yeah, there's always got to be, my rule is there's always got to be at least track in the shot, even if it's really difficult to see. There's always got to be a nod to the fact that we're about trains. But yeah, I like those too.
It's a good rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also something to do while you're waiting. Because sometimes, I waited 16 hours before, 2 9-hour days, and never got a train on this one bridge in Texas. And then I found out that the line was down and they weren't running anything on it. So had I checked, it would have been different.
Is there a line for you between art and journalism? And which do you prefer? And I ask this because you say you don't like wrestling with reality.
Yeah, I mean, this is a story. I mean, I started as a photojournalist, right? So I've done tons of stories. I've always viewed myself as someone that was more interesting in aesthetics than I was to storytelling personally. I have great admiration for the storytellers out there. And I can spin a yarn when I need to, but usually I'm reacting more to visuals. And I think that comes from drawing and, I don't know, the photography I've gravitated toward in my life for the most part was more like you could call Robert Frank, a storyteller, but really it was this great collection of individual images. Like if I'm talking about the Americans, for example, they're kind of amazing images, and when he contextualized the 82 images that are in that book, it became a story about something, but at the time, very obtuse, I mean, it was viewed as being scandalous, really, But what was the question? Art?
Oh,
Art and storytelling?
You don't like dealing with reality, so how do you,
Oh, yeah.
how do you handle the journalism?
Yeah. I mean, when I say I don't like dealing particularly with reality, the reality that I've created for myself I like to deal with, I enjoy. But the reality of, the all-encompassing reality of life is really difficult for me to deal with. Kath and I have we're like ninjas at compartmentalization. She knows her part, I do my part. I've had a lot of people ask me why wasn't it difficult to work with your wife? And I would answer we have it totally down. We know who does what, when, when I come in, when I kind of swoop in and do my part, but the reality of running a business and a household and all those things, that I find difficult, And I view it kind of difficult because it's sort of, I hate to say it's a distraction, but it kind of is a distraction from just my thought process. What do you think about that? I feel like I'm hogging all the questions.
No, you're fine. I think that's a pretty clear description of, you're just, you spend most of your time, I think I spent a lot of years fighting this. I spent a lot of years in therapy, why won't he, why can't he, why doesn't he, act like a normal person? But you spend your time in a different part of your brain and consciousness than most people, I feel. So I feel like those things that have to take place every day for all people in the world that are just kind of functional reality things are actually difficult for you.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't know if that's, I think they always kind of have been. We touched on the TBI and the brain damage. They became even more difficult after that. So it's sort of lack of organizational skills that just deal with everyday things. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, he's creating these. Or I know he's talking about when you asked about chaos and then how do you, there's a piece he missed about that, which is that there can be, or he himself can create, a lot of chaos in one way, but then around, before, after, having nothing to do with photo shoots or when we're setting them up. But it's then he gets to that moment where he's with the camera and it's almost like he's only calm completely in those moments. So it's like the eye of a storm or something. That's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I talk to friends, other photographers, and they're like, do you get nervous before shoots? And I'm like, it's the only time I'm not nervous.
He's not nervous, yeah. It's where he's the most comfortable.
Yeah.
It's the rest of it where he's not comfortable. No.
Anyone have any? Oh, we have a question back here.
Kat, I would like to say, how long are the cooling sessions of the photos? How do you not go crazy when you have to choose between the photos?
Oh, editing, yeah. I'm really good at editing my own work. You know what I do is I start backwards. I start with the last picture, and I edit backwards, because I have this ability when I'm shooting to recognize when it's working, and when it's working, I just stop. Like if I get it, I'm like, okay, I got it. So I know experientially, like, just to go backwards. I don't shoot that much either. If I shoot a portrait, like I shot 4x5 for like 30 years, and I would shoot, there's a portrait of Helen Mirren, I don't know if you saw that one up there, 22 frames I shot of that. It's hardly any. And then I did another tighter shot of her, and I shot another like 17 or 18. You know, I would always shoot under 100 exposures when I was shooting 4x5, always. Usually about 75 sheets. And then now I don't shoot very much. You know, I'll like get it, and then I'm done. I got it. And then move on. So I don't do like, you know, I'm not shooting monarchs. I love that, 20,000 frames later. But most of what I'm shooting is pretty still, too. It's not fluid and moving. It's always controlled, you know.
I'm going to try this approach, Dan, the next time. I'm just going to start going backwards.
Oh, yeah, just go backwards.
Backwards
Yeah.
editing.
Ask me the last question. Anybody
So,
else?
Anybody else?
That was funny.
Okay.
Okay.
You wrote that visual art can never adequately be described. It must be seen, it must be felt, that the reaction should not be how, but why. Can you talk about the evolution of your own visual voice?
Yeah. I think there's a tendency when we work in a technical medium like photography to ask that how question pretty quickly. Oh my God, how did you do that? How did you do that? You know, that's a very common reaction, I think. If we can kind of limit our response to like the thought behind it, not even to say that we don't ask the how question at some point, but we think about the thought behind the image. I think we allow ourselves to, because I think there's a tendency in art in general, and probably in many areas of life, to feel like we're smart, right? So if I can tell you how that was done, I have something up on the photographer, you know? And I don't think that's a good way to like view art at all. There was a great Einstein quote, and he said, he was like talking about, describing music. You can describe music, but it's a waste of time. It would be like describing a Mozart symphony as a series of wave pressure. I'm butchering it, but the idea is like you could describe what's going on scientifically with music, for example, right? It's a series of like differential pressures, wave pressure in like an environment, in an atmosphere. But it doesn't tell you anything about the music, but I've just described it to you. It's just like describing things mathematically. Yes, but where's the heart in that? Unless you're a mathematician, and I know you find a lot of heart in that. My son one time told me, he said, I don't like art. He was trying to get out of art classes in high school. And I'm like, all I tried to do when I was in high school is get in art classes. But his whole thing was like, I don't like art. And so he got a teacher's assistant in like a trigonometry class. And I'm like, God, that would be like my worst nightmare. But he said, yeah, I don't like art. And I said, why don't you like art? And he goes, because I never know when it's done. And I said, okay, fair enough. You know, he's got a mathematical mind. Yep. He has a problem. He works the problem. And it's finished, and it's done. And you can look at that and understand, I have completed this task. And with art, it's much more amorphous, much more ambiguous. So I said to him, well, there's truth to that, but the more you do it, the more you understand when it's done. And I think that was a good moment for him. We've talked about that kind of moment.
Catherine, is that your mind? Is that the mathical mind?
Myself, mathematical? Yeah, I think I'm I'm a much more practical. We're definitely opposites in that way. So any situation that we approach, I think it's why it works really well. We're like the yin yang. We can be on the same phone call, about a job, and he is thinking about completely different things, and whatever I'm thinking about, he's not thinking about. So we ask the whole array of the right questions because, yeah, my mind works in a very logical way. And yeah, I would say my son's an aerospace engineer. I could never do that. But he and I are probably more alike in that
More
way.
similar. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So, Darren, you also wrote, I mean, sort of sticking with craft and technique. Technique is part of our craft and it plays an integral role. However, it should not be at the core of our work. Ours should be a pursuit of the soul. And yet, what was interesting was when I asked several photographers who are fans of yours what they would want to ask you, it was all about technique. I asked my husband about this, and he said he feels that your images have a certain patina. He says it's like you desaturate, and yet somehow it's vibrant, and it just, all he ever wants to do is, he loves the images, but how did you do that?
Well, I think, so for me, if I'm going to be interested in something and try to pursue something, I want to know everything about it. So I'm one of those people that completely tried to master the technique of what I'm doing so that I understand how I can accomplish whatever I want to accomplish. And then I can apply that knowledge to whatever I'm doing. So, I'm really technical, but I think you say, the idea behind technique is it's like dialogue for actors. You learn it, you forget it, and it comes out. And I think with technique in painting or in anything else, I'm not doing something and thinking about the technique. It's just second nature. But I have gone to great lengths to try to understand, from photochemistry to sensitometry to, back when we were shooting film, I used a densitometer all the time on my negatives. I was very technical. And I enjoy that part of it a lot. But I don't think that's at the core of my work. I wouldn't say a lot of it's really technical. So yeah, there's that response of those launches are really hard to shoot. That's very technical. But I don't think it should be at the core of the work. I would hate for my work to be described as technical. It's really technical. I don't know that that's a great description. Right?
I don't think that's, I think they're just mesmerized by how you get to it, how you get to that end result, which is always so beautiful.
Yeah.
I call it's like the look is the winter light. That's how I love
and
it.
I enjoy it. It's fun. It's really fun. Sometimes if I'm doing ad work, like a movie poster or something like that, I understand that on that day I'm being hired as an artist, but also as a craftsman, because I have to solve a technical problem, and I can do that, and I'm happy to do that. When I was early in my career, I didn't have a good attitude about commercial work because I thought it was kind of like a sellout. I'm an artist, I'm not a commercial photographer, it's just and I kind of made peace with that, and I'm grateful that I did, because I have no problem collaborating with people and, using sort of technique to solve problems, and, I do all kinds of really technical stuff, and I enjoy it, but yeah, I don't think it's at the core of my work. I think that black and white work we showed at the end was kind of what my work would be if I was to describe my work.
Yeah. We're running out of time fast. I want to I want to bring up something that your friend Tate said, and I just kind of loved it. Tate told me that you can see and experience the cool, the beauty of nature, even in your own snot.
Snot, which I'm struggling with right now, by the way.
Have you ever wanted to photograph wildlife other than bees?
I'm trying to think if I have photographed any wildlife. I know I've dived for many, many years, and I never have had a desire once to take a camera down with me, because I want to fully just take it in, and I feel like I'm in space, and I'm on another planet, and I like the way it feels. And there are guys that do dive photography that are unbelievable at it, and I know I'll never, ever achieve that, nor do I want to. And so I don't have a problem with that. But wildlife, no. I mean, I photographed the eagle
I'm not
one time.
crushed, don't worry.
I mean, a lot of insects. I like insects. That's kind of those are my little wildlife friends.
We're just about out of time, and so Catherine, I'm gonna throw this to you. Tate said about you, there is no quit. And you heard me
There's
say a
no
little
quit.
bit earlier that the secret sauce between you and Dan is his talent, his creativity, and your emotional intelligence.
It's really sweet of him. Call and thank him. So, was there a question in there?
What do you think about that?
I think that's probably, that's, I suppose, accurate. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good description of us. I have to start taking him around with us.
Yeah, Tate we were all roommates
Yeah,
like 33 years ago. And so he has a unique position on all of that and the way it functions. But we're still incredibly close to him, so that was like a friend that has endured.
he knows us well.
He knows us very well, yeah.
Well, this went
That's it.
fast.
No questions,
good.
huh? One
Any-
question.
Anyone have a question?
Full
Anybody else?
house,
One last
one question.
Yeah,
We have
no,
one right down here.
Got one back here too, if that's all right.
Please.
Over here.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I like
Do it.
questions.
Hey, thanks very much. I loved the idea of Dylan charging you for his image. And actually, I was quite moved in the scenes from Bangladesh, where you were giving photographs back to the people you'd photographed. And I guess my question is, who owns the image when you're taking images of people, particularly people who haven't asked to have their portrait taken? And is that something you've thought much about? And how do you deal with giving back to the people you photograph, especially if it's a candid photograph?
So this is what I do. I mean, I ask them, right, through Ratan, my fixer in Bangladesh, for example. I tell them what I'm doing, and I ask them if they'd be willing to sit for me. And once they're committed to it, I'll make the picture. I always make a point of trying to give my subjects, every single person I've ever photographed for years, I give them all my contact info, and I say, reach out once it's published, reach out to me, call me, email me, give me your information, and I'll send you a print. So I at least keep that side of the street clean. Like, it's a reciprocal sort of like thing. The Bangladesh thing, I have not done anything with those pictures at all. I don't know what I would do with them. Whatever was going to happen with them, though, I would say would be something that, shined a positive light on those workers. They work for next to nothing. A quarter of the workforce in Bangladesh works in that industry, in the ship repair industry. I watched Mary Ellen speak one time years ago, and someone asked her a question about, do you like help the people or this or that? And she said, I'm a photographer, not a social worker. I try to shed light on the situation, but I can't be the one that's fixing it. So, there's nothing obviously that I could do to better any of their lives other than to be genuine, kind, honest with them. And every single one of them seemed ecstatic that they got a print of themselves, because I don't think it's very common that people get a print, let alone sort of like a proper sitting. And I own the copyright to everything.
I think we had one last question.
Okay.
Down here.
Lara, can you help?
We can't.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Buonasera, io parlo in italiano, quindi qualcuno può tradurre?
Lara, can you help?
Volevo solo fare a tutte e due i complimenti per il bellissimo video che ci avete fatto vedere, mi ha commosso, pieno di commozione, e i sentimenti si riflettono tutti sui suoi ritratti. Si vede che dietro c'è una grande vostra sensibilità, e quindi per questo vi dico grazie, solo questo.
Oh, I kind of got that.
Did you understood now?
Kind of, yeah.
Let him tell us.
So, well, quickly she said that, she really enjoys the documentary, of course, but and your sensibilities is reflects on the picture. So the feeling that you have as a person is on your picture. So she said, thank you for this.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Grazie. Grazie mille.
Okay.
Okay, we done?
Don't go anywhere. If I could ask all of the presenters to join me on stage as well as Luca, that would be great.
There's Luca,
There
There he is.
hiding over there.
Catherine, thank you.
Good job, bud.
You're great.
You said that out loud.
I know.
They can hear
I
us.
just realized that. Oh, I did.
My nickname.
Look at Laura.
No baby talk. No baby talk. They're coming. There we are. Should take off your take off your mic. Take off your mic.
N-H-O or O scale?
And those trains, and I have hundreds of other ones. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Have you ever seen Z scale?
All right, everyone, thank you so much for spending the day
Smaller
with
than
us.
N.
And remember, tomorrow evening, we have the awards ceremony,
doing?
and we hope to see you again there. I think right
Yeah.
now,
Oh, I
there
see,
are
I see.
aperitifs and canapes down in the courtyard, so hope to see you down there as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, right. All right. He's a cool guy. I like him. Oops. Yeah, he's nice. He'll just keep shooting. Where's Luca? Oh, there he is. Our friend.
Good. Done.